I also wonder, I basically you're the type of guy, and I try to as well. The type of guy that like is about living life and about experiencing things. And yeah, like if success comes with that, great. But in your bio it says over what is it? Over trying to be successful or something like that.
Making
Oh yeah, that's right. Kind of over making it. And I feel similarly. Like sure, would it be fun to be like, would it be nice to be quote unquote worldly successful? Sure, but I'm not worried about it. And so,
mm,
what do you have to
I don't
speak
even
to that?
I don't even know if I agree with you on that. I think that a lot of people, they're interested in the paycheck, but they're not interested in the work that comes with that. And I
Hmm.
think that there are a million ways to. I think most people, when they think of success, they think of money, fame, and power. I think of alignment with your calling, and I don't think that most of us are called to be rich, famous, or powerful. I just don't think that that is actually our calling. I do think that there are callings for us where that is a byproduct. And I
Yeah.
think the healthiest people that the world looks at and says like, "Wow, super successful," are not attached to those things at all. It's a byproduct. You don't see that, and sometimes it gets to them. When they find themselves rooting in fear, or they sort of move up in status and start comparing themselves to the next link. Like we're all humans, and that happens to a lot of people. But some of the best people that um, a lot of people that I look up to, who you might, uh, according to those, if those are the grades on the rubric, um, money, fame, power, they have those things because they are a byproduct. It wasn't that they were trying to become
Right.
uh, rich, monetarily rich. They weren't trying to become powerful. They weren't trying to become famous. They became those things because they really aligned. I think it's almost when you truly align with the thing that you're supposed to be, it's almost hard not to become those things.
Hmm.
Because you hit this sort of flow state where you're like, this is who I'm supposed to be. And you're just gonna crush, like you're just gonna do really well when you hit that flow state and you're not distracted by a million things. I think most of us are absolutely distracted by so many things. We feel called to do this, and I think we should do this, and I think we should do this. And we oftentimes are going so fast, we don't slow down to ask, well, what is my calling?
Hmm.
What am I actually like when I check internally, not externally? Not like, oh, I need to do this so I impress these people, or I need to do this so I don't look stupid in front of this one, or whatever. I'm not trying to impress my parents or the guy who said I couldn't, or a teacher who doubted me, or a teacher who believed in me. I'm just like, what truly is what do I feel the best?
Yeah.
Where do I find, where do I find alignment when I do whatever that thing is? I think when you do that and you start stacking years on top of that alignment, it's just very hard not to be successful in those other ways,
Yeah.
because people are going to be so attracted to your energy, they're going to be so attracted to your path and to your way of being, um, that they're just like they don't want to look away because you're being honest. And yeah, so I don't know that like the sort of worldly successes. I find a lot of people that pursue those things
Yep.
specifically for those things, and it just seems like they've never got enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they've never got enough validation. They've never got enough and it's far more. I'm like, dude, if I had what you had, I would be. I feel like I would be so happy.
Hmm.
I would be so, I wouldn't be stressed about this or that, but they feel the exact same way. They're just looking up farther ahead. And you will always have somebody, quote unquote, ahead of you and whatever. It's funny because, Mark, jujitsu has blown up in the last 5 years, even in the last 10 years, but specifically the last 5 years, I'm just like, dude, everybody's doing jujitsu. It's crazy.
I want to learn.
Dude, everybody does, and everybody should. There's part of me that's like, when you like a band and
Yep.
they got big, but you liked them before they were big, you're sort of like, you don't even. But
Yep.
the less judgmental and more curious and more celebratory side of me is so stoked because I have said everybody needs to do jujitsu. Everyone should do jujitsu. And now that everyone's doing it, I'm sort of like, we need less of you dorks out here, you know? Uh, but Mark Zuckerberg's been doing jujitsu, and I don't know if he's a blue belt, purple belt by now. Obviously he can afford the best teaching and all of the things. But it's been interesting to go like, okay, here's a guy who's got all the things. He's money. He's got more than he could spend if he tried, and just an incredible amount of wealth. Fame, everybody knows who that is. You say his name, people know who he is. Power, absolutely. The dude could, he can move oceans with his with social influence. It's actually like really incredible, right? And he's learning jujitsu. And he's a blue belt. He's a
Yeah.
white belt. And he's a blue belt. And you go, oh, you're a blue belt. And then I'm like, I want to see you succeed. Let's see how you're doing. And you're watching this guy who's got everything you think you might want, and all he wants is what you've got. And I find that to be a pretty common theme. Um, Pretty common theme. Years ago, Shia LaBeouf was hiking his way through this area, and he was, just out on sort of a spirit quest, which I'm very familiar with. Um, I followed Mike Posner.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, he did this walk across America, and I met him at the end of it, actually,
Got
in
bit
Los
by a snake. Almost
Angeles.
died.
Yep, yep, got bit by a rattlesnake. And it was crazy. I met him at the end of that it was the weirdest happenstance. I got on the plane on my way to LA, and the lady's like, "So what takes you to LA?" And I'm like, "I don't know, jump in the water, see a friend. I might tell Mike Posner to keep going," because his whole thing on that trip, he just said, keep going. And it was so cool. I just loved it. I didn't even know who he was, like but I found him through that. And I was like, someone actually sent me like, hey, you should go find this guy. Because I
Hmm.
was traveling. I think that might have been 2017 or 2018, but I was traveling. Um, and then I said that on the plane, obviously not having any plan. And then we randomly went to this yoga studio, and we were going to go one day, and we didn't make it because it was traffic and all the things. So we went the next day, and then I'm in the locker room and I'm changing, and I'm like, man, can you wear your shirt in there? And this dude is like, yeah, definitely don't wear your shirt. Or I was like, can you not wear a shirt?
Oh
So
yeah.
it was hot yoga. It was like 115 in there. And I was like, dude, it wasn't 115. It was very hot.
Yeah.
Like the hottest hot yoga I've been to. He's like, definitely don't wear. He's like, wear as little as you can and do this, and gave me some tips and offered me some like little foot thingies, and it was awesome. And then I was like, and then he kind of like kept changing, and I'm like, man, I swear I know this guy. And this dude just looks seems super familiar, but I obviously don't know him. I'm not from here, and I met this random yoga studio, and and I was like, wait, that's Mike Posner. And then I realized it, and then we talked for a while longer, but I didn't want to, blow him up and be like, bro. But then I was like, when I went out and he went out, I went out and I was like, hey, Mike. And he turned and he's like, yo. And I'm like, keep going, dude. And I was like, I got to tell Mike, keep going. And he like winked at me. He was like, oh, cool. You
Yeah.
pay attention. It's like, what up? My life is such a funny thing. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, wait, so like back to like, what did he want? He accomplished all these things. His friend died. His dad died. Like there is no. I think that when you really break all of that down, um, when you really break it down, like the greatest sin is wanting to become God, right?
Yeah.
Wanting to replace God. And I think that we all have that in us. When you look at the Genesis story, um, that's what they wanted, the knowledge of good and evil. They wanted to become God, to become like God. And I think that when you look at a lot of our actions, with the desire for money, fame, power, all of that, really our actions um, are to be like the desire, the root desire there is like we want to become God. And I think like that's a lot of the reason we want to become so strong. That's the reason we want to become powerful. That's the reason we want to become dangerous. That's we want to be the best everything. And I think it's really important that we recognize that in ourselves and that we humble ourselves and like, dude, you could absolutely nail it. You could become the best human you could ever become, as strong and as fast and as discerning and as wise and all of the things, and you'd be a drop in the ocean, you
Yep.
know. And most of us are not going to do our best. Like we're going to fail over and over and over again. That's who we are. That's
Yep.
what we are. And so when you let God be God and you let you be faithful, you drop a lot of the core of that. You drop a lot of the toxic core of your masculine expression. And so, yeah, I think it's hard to tell people like, well, you want to be God.
Right.
That's why. And it's hard to look in the mirror and go, you want to be God. No, I don't. Obviously, I don't want to be God. I'm a man of God. I'm a child of the King, and blah blah blah. Um, and I think, yes, you do. Yes, you do. It's your sickness. You know what I mean? It is what you were born with. It is like that is your being. That is why. You know, that's the whole story. Yes, you do, and that's why you're covered in the blood of the Lamb.
Yep.
You know, so that God, who would destroy you, you know, uh, loves you instead.
Yep.
And I think I think that path is a way to remove the toxic piece from the masculinity piece.
Yep.
And I think that, I mean, maybe even like, we're discovering things here. Maybe that is toxic masculinity. Masculinity is like is in the likeness of God,
Yes.
uh, and toxic masculinity is trying to replace him.
Mm.
Which is the intent of that, which is why that whole conversation with of the Sabbath and honor the Sabbath and Black Sabbath and all of that. For me, I said it's not. I don't believe that to be blasphemous. It could be, and someone else might say the exact same thing, and it might be blasphemous. But I just believe that God sees the intent of our heart. He knows it before we know it. He knew it before we had the thought. And I also think that God has the deepest sense of humor that
Yeah.
exists in the universe. So, anyway.
No, you're right. It's the perspective piece. This is what it really comes back down to.